What's up, guys? Eric here. I want to bring you a quick update on the market, share some updates on AMD stock, Nvidia stock, Palantir stock, a few others that are potential trim areas, as well as some stocks I'm looking to buy now. I'm going to go through that. Congratulations to the bulls, the QQQ, the NASDAQ 100 at all-time highs, barely clinging on to all-time highs right now at $540.62. The market's been on absolute fire. You can see Nvidia's up 3.75% today, Google up 2.2% today. We do have an overall mix in the market. You can see some red in here. Tesla's down 4%. But that QQQ closed yesterday at new all-time highs. You have $515 support right now. Look for 554 to 557. That's the R3 Fibonacci up here in this yellow circle. You could see some resistance. You could see some consolidation at any time. If you've been following the channel, guys, you know that we told you to trim AMD when it was $200 a share. It was expensive here. It was overvalued. And we waited for it to come back. We were buying it. We didn't time it perfectly or anything, but we were buying it as it got below $100 a share DCA. Now AMD at $142 a share. You can see it's above the R3s as well as the moving averages. So AMD, you can see here, guys, I'm doing pretty well. I've got 695 shares. Cost basis is around $81 a share. I'm personally not trimming it because it is only about 3.5% of the portfolio, so it's not overweight. Don't be surprised if you see some resistance between really where we're at right now and $150 a share. You certainly could see this $175 to $200 range, but more than likely you're going to need some sort of catalyst like earnings. And right now it's looking like August 5th is the scheduled. I don't think that's confirmed, but August 5th we're going to have another earnings report from AMD. I think if it does get back to that $175 to $200 level, especially if it happens this year, like later this year, I'd probably trim some of those shares back, but I'm keeping most of those as a long-term investment. Keep in mind, guys, when we say trim and fired up wealth, it doesn't mean liquidating your portfolio. Winners keep winning. And if you have a 10, 15-year horizon, maybe you don't trim any shares at all. We talk a lot about the accumulation phase and the preservation phase in fired up wealth. And if topics like that are interesting to you, of course, we have a masterclass video series with 22 videos that deep dive into those topics. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know we've been talking about Nvidia since 2019. And I've showed this to you several times before that we will see $165 to $175 later in 2025. We officially made new all-time highs today. It topped out at $153.95, trading just below that right now. And you can see that this stock is up almost 1,600% in the past 5 years. It's now a $3.75 trillion market cap. You can see I currently have about 2,500 shares. That cost basis is strong, $3.95, been long since 2017. It is over 13% of my portfolio right now, so I do plan on trimming, but I'm waiting for that $165 to $175 price. I think with time, you'll probably see $200 plus on Nvidia, and I'll more than likely trim some more shares when it gets in that price level. I'd like to get that from 13% down to 5%, but I'm going to take advantage of the best prices I possibly can. For me personally, I've accumulated some wealth over the years, and I want to slowly start taking those profits and converting those into passive income through dividends. And that's a journey that I share recently on Masterclass Volume 22. If you're a young investor, dividends might not be your focus, but the power of compounding truly is unlocked when you think of DGIF type stocks. Another fired up wealth favorite, Palantir, topped out today at $147.67. You can see it's pulled back to about $143. So this is rocking a $336 billion market cap now. You can see it's up 481% over the past year. And since it came public, it's up 1,451%. Of course, we covered this 6 months before it went public in that direct listing, October 2nd, 2020. We were buying this in Discord at $9 and $10. So congratulations to the community for another huge winner here. Let's look at a chart. So this Fibonacci R3 is at $151.70. I told the community in Eric's watch list in Discord the other day, I do think there's a decent chance it gets to 150, maybe 155. Of course, it could pull back anytime and consolidate. It did exactly that this morning, got to 147, pulled back a bit. I still think there's some momentum. I still think there's a really good chance it's going to break $150 a share. You can see I've got 450 shares. I'm looking at trimming 50 more shares when it gets to $150 a share. I'll keep those other 400 shares long. Of course, if it keeps going higher, I'll trim a little bit more, but I am a long-term investor and I'm still trying to hold these stocks for long-term. Snowflake is another one of my favorites. This is a little bit overweight, over 5%. I've got 700 shares and I'm doing 2 covered calls right now, so 200 shares there. I also have a limit order in for about $250 and it might not get there. You can see this R3 is at $238.80. That would also be a double top area. This is from February of 2024. So we fell off a cliff here. February 2024 was a $237 stock, sold all the way down to 107. Now today back to 221 bucks a share. And this comment here was a previous chart day, so I'm going to turn it orange. But I do think that there's still upside momentum to this. If it gets to around $250, maybe even at this 237 level, you could see some resistance, some consolidation. Another fired up wealth favorite since 2019, since the IPO, is CrowdStrike. Now you can see this R2 is $493. This R3 is up here closer to 520 bucks a share. I currently have 185 shares. These are house shares, and I'm going to trim 15 shares when we get to $520.77. So that's just slightly above this R3 up here, and it might not get that high. That's where I have my limit order in. So I'd keep those remaining 150 shares long. And most of these stocks that we're talking about today are also in that community portfolio as well. Cloudflare, one of the first Discord buys when we started the community in July of 2020. Now back then we were buying around $35 a share. Today it's 190 bucks a share. This R3 is 197, and I do have an order to sell 50 shares in that area. So currently I own 300 house shares, and I'm trimming 50, keeping the other 250 long. You can see Zscaler is above the R3. This R3 Fibonacci is 309.52, and the high this morning was $316.44. I own 170 shares. I was looking to trim 20 shares at 317.77. Just came short this morning. We'll see if it consolidates and goes back later this week, early next week. SOFI stock, we were liking this one when it was one price to book. Of course, had this big rip up to 18, pulled all the way back to 8. Now it's sitting at 16. So this is another one of those stocks that doubled since recent lows. It is above the Fibonacci R3, which is 1585. I'm not trimming any of this right now because it is all house shares, but just something to be aware of, because if you do own this stock, it could see some consolidation. In a bull market situation, you could see an extension of maybe $17, probably some pretty heavy resistance there, maybe even 20 bucks. Let's talk about Tesla stock really quick. Last year, it was a focus for us. We were really trying to target 175 or less DCA with a preference below 150. Of course, you know this stock ripped all the way to $488 here at end of 2024. So topped out around 488, dropped all the way down here to $214, and then ripped back to 367, pulled back again to 273, and today it's trading about 327. So it's kind of been all over the place. Of course, you had the robo-taxi event here in Austin, Texas. Where's the stock headed next? I think if it consolidates, it certainly could go back to this $400 level. This R3 is 425. Remember, this stock doesn't trade solely off fundamentals. There's a lot of qualitative analysis that goes into it. There's also a lot of retail excitement, momentum. It's a cult stock, meme stock, whatever you want to call it, but retail definitely is behind this stock. So if you're using traditional methods, you're a value investor trying to use a PE ratio, it's probably not going to be your huckleberry. There's a lot of opportunity here, of course, for robo-taxis, for moonshots like Optimus. We call this a clean energy conglomerate like an ETF. It is one that I like to have in my portfolios. Of course, Tesla is a polarizing stock, and it might not be for everybody. I think if the market stays bullish, you're going to see that $350 to $400 level. Let's talk about a few stocks that are potential buys. Now, MongoDB got down to $140. I still believe that this stock is worth $225 as at a minimum. So right now we're sitting at 204. I think as it gets below $200, when you see it dip down to say 182, under $200 DCA, but this isn't a risk-free stock. There's certainly some speculation. There's risk reward to this. It might not be for every portfolio, but if you think about the highest quality growth type companies, none of them are really on sale. This is one that is beat down pretty good. And you can see we've gone through this before with MongoDB. You know, back in 2021, it was like a $600 stock, sold all the way down here to 137, ripped to 509, back in that 140 range here. I'm not saying it has to necessarily go to 509 anytime soon, but I do think it's worth at least $225. And you could see something like $250, $300 later this year, early next year, assuming that earnings go well. I own 300 shares of this, cost basis around 188. So it's one of the few stocks, honestly, that aren't bagger stocks in the top 50% of the portfolio. This thing's absolutely been on fire. GitLab, I just bought some more of this actually earlier this week, under $40 a share. I still like it at 42 bucks a share. Got down to 37.90 here in April. It was a $75 stock. I think there's a good chance you see 50, maybe even $60 later this year, early 2026. Qualcomm stock, I like this one a lot. They're doing a lot of great things. I've shared a lot of DD on the channel. This video is more a quick high level looking at charts, telling you some prices, but if you're really interested in learning about these stocks, definitely check out other videos on the channel. Qualcomm was 230. We said, hey, I wouldn't touch this over at 175. Started buying it around 150, dropped all the way down to 120 in April, back to 155 today. Now, Qualcomm pays you a 2.29% dividend. It's trading at about a 15.18 PE ratio. This is TTM ATM. And I do think Qualcomm is a buy, especially $150 a share DCA. If you're new here and this content is helpful, make sure you subscribe and click that bell for notifications. And do me a favor, drop me a like, drop me a comment. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.